Good morning. This is Playing to Win with Mark Henderson Leary and my good friend Brad Freyer. How are you this morning?
I'm delightful, Mark. How are you?
Are you woken up when I just started us like in the middle of a sentence with you?
I'll be honest. I was waiting for that. Yeah, you did cut me off, but I was waiting for that big shock moment of good morning.
I'm fired up. You can see I got 10,000 volts going through my veins, which has got to be weird for you because just 11 seconds ago, I was just regular Mark, right?
You were just regular Mark.
Oh, man. So how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Really well. I had a good trip this weekend. I was going to show you a picture, and I was trying to figure out if I could show the thing. Maybe I can do it on my phone. Actually, that's what I was logging into, and then didn't quite get there. If I can show you the picture of one of the things I was doing this weekend, and that is...
And I am going to apologize in advance, Mark. I'm in Colorado. Something's blowing in the air. My allergies are getting me a little bit, so forgive the froggy tone or if I sniffle throughout our conversation today.
So I don't know if can you see that? Can you see that image?
Oh, nice. I can see the vehicles, and I can see, coming up, going up a hill.
Yeah, so that's me in the one going up the hill. It doesn't look like much. I mean, it looks like a little something, but it was a 30-degree uphill at an off-road park. And the family, those of us in town, those of them in town, we had a Jeep load of people going through the 101 training of the trail riding at a place up near Bryan.
Very cool.
And certainly I had to look confident. No, I don't feel any sense of danger right now. I'm not feeling like I've only been paying on this truck for 4 months, 6 months. It's going to be an upside down on it in 2 ways.
What up, bump? Pun number 1 of the day.
Yeah, but it was great. It was fun. The family came together over it, and it was a lot of fun to kind of be challenging and doing things that not comfortable, kind of out of the comfort zone.
Nice. I dig that.
And so here's the topic for the day, the edge. So Stephen Kotler and Rian Doris with the Flow Research Collective, which in their flow, I don't know if you have Stephen Kotler, but he's really focused on this idea of flow, what it is to get into the flow state, to be able to push yourself to have that flowy existence of really effortless performance at your highest and best, which is elusive feeling for a lot of people. But it's also this concept of the edge. It's a little different concept coming from a guy like David Data, talking about, like in his book, The Way of the Superior Man, but talking about an individual pursuit of their edge, getting themselves out to literally their emotional edge, which is to say not over the edge. And it's a really powerful concept, and it's a really important concept because I think we go to the gym, many of us, and we work out, and we're kind of by nature, we're at our physical edge. Because like if we push ourselves, it's expanding our bounds, and if we want to go beyond our edge, lifting weight, you can't because it just sits there. So you try to lift the weight, and I'm going to beyond my edge. You can't do that. But in life, it's a little bit different. So we have the ability to be complacent. We can just sit around and watching the TV and watching the football game over and over again, which I love to do. But I recognize that after a while, a certain amount of football creates a sense of stagnance and comfort. But then we can go beyond that. We can take on challenges that are more than we can handle. Our skills aren't there to be able to do that. And sometimes it can be humbling. Sometimes it can be a little fun or just awakening. And other times it can be brutal and repetitive, making us feel like we're not able to be successful. And so I'm curious, there's a lot, I think it's a lot of different ways, but how do you find your edge? How do you find ways to challenge yourself business-wise, professionally, personally, that kind of take you into that place where you're learning, growing, and, in the proper, healthy way?
It's a great question. You did tell me that there was going to be a surprise topic for today, and so I was not prepared with talking points or the opportunity to think in advance. So,
well, you are though, because
you got me on the spot.
So, what are you about to do this afternoon?
So I am speaking to a national conference today, and that is certainly one of the ways that I get out of my comfort zone and enjoy pushing the limits of what I do and how I do it. I think part of being an entrepreneur in itself pushes those edges because you're going in areas that you haven't been before. You're trying to grow, you're trying to build, you're trying to add on. Yeah. That's a really good question.
So just walk me through this. I can guide you through this. I thought a lot about this topic. So think about this. You're about ready to go on stage.
Yeah.
Is it easy?
Up until the moment when you walk in the ballroom and you see, several hundred faces staring at you, waiting for you to deliver content that's going to fulfill that hour of their life.
Yeah.
Up until that moment, it's easy.
Yeah. And so you're doing great. So why are you not worried in that moment? Up until that moment?
Up until that moment, preparation tends to be the key factor.
Yeah, you've got the skills. You've done some research. You've done how many times have you been in front?
Notes that I'm running over and over and over it. Yeah, absolutely.
How many times have you spoken in front of people?
Hundreds. Yeah.
So what that means? So when you get out there, the level goes up. And it pushes you into that slightly adrenalized state, right? What's different? Extremely. Okay, extremely. Yeah. So this is great. So the polarity here is really high. So we're going from lots of preparation. I've done this hundreds of times. I am not worried at all. Yeah. But then something changes, and you push yourself a little further out. What's different today when you're out on stage in front of a couple hundred people in a national conference of people who are experienced and they're expecting some seriously good content from somebody? They've seen some pretty good speakers, and you better level up, right? What's different today than, say, the first time you got in front of somebody?
Not a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
Aside from knowing the content better and being able to ebb and flow based on the response of the audience, the butterflies are still there, the nerves are still there, the amount of preparation is still there. So, it continues to be one of those things that, I've done this before, it's going to be fine. And you go into it, but then you walk into the ballroom and you see all the people and you're like, oh crap, what if it's not good? What if I screw up? What if this doesn't resonate with this group? And so then you start having all that self-talk and fear.
What's interesting? So last time we talked a lot about asking better questions and what questions do to converting uncertainty and chaos into structure and order and all that. It's just amazing to me how the concept of uncertainty, the I don't know what's about to happen, is an evergreen well of challenge. I just mixed the metaphor badly. It's a never going to dry out well of challenge. And so you can kind of make of it what you want, because you can level. I think what I was trying to go for, I was kind of fishing for, I think, whether this is right or wrong, that what really has changed for you on that stage is your expectations of yourself. The first day you went out there, you were like, I would like to be, my criteria for success of getting on stage is getting off stage.
Without being booed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, check, done. It's behind me. I've got a list of lessons learned and all the things that go with that. And today it's like, no, I know I'm going to get off stage. I want a line of people. I want some really challenging questions. I want people to go, that was amazing, because you have leveled up every single time you've done this, and up and down, right? So there's a feedback loop that Stephen Kotler, and they talk about this all the time. To get into flow, you need rapid feedback. You have to be able to continue to up your game. You've got to walk the line of what they call the challenge skills balance. And that's the challenge and skills together. Like, you have to have enough challenge to pick your skills and push them into that flow zone to get you to really kind of lose sense of the fundamentals. It pushes you just into, like, your attention has to be on what's the next thing and not who am I and what's the temperature of the room. Like, we're way past that. I'm plugged into the audience. I'm plugged into the next question, and you're just kind of flowing through, almost like you're skiing. DNA. It's like skiing. Like, have you ever been in that flow state skiing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the idea. So pushing for that, but I think there's two ways this idea of the edge come about or become important, and I do think the pursuit of flow, and that's really what Kotler's stuff is about, is how much flow can you get into life, because you do more, you make a bigger difference, and it's very fulfilling for people. People feel like that's amazing, but I also just think that it's basic that you must get yourself out of your comfort zone, even if it doesn't get you into flow. Finding a way to put yourself in that space where it's not as safe as it could be and not too dangerous for you. You must continue to put yourself into that spot where you can find that edge. There's something new to learn, a way to fail a little bit, a way to find out some feedback of what worked and what didn't on an ongoing basis. So is that making sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
What other way, do you ever find this in selling? You're a selling guy, right? You do a lot of selling. You ever find yourself at the edge?
Yeah, it's interesting because what's going on in my head right now, and just full disclosure, as we talk about the edge, I had one of my great friends, Slade Lewis, competed in his second ever Ironman this weekend.
Oh, wow.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so as he was racing, I was following him on this app. And, the pieces to an Ironman, but this is he's my neighbor, regular guy, just like us. He's a business owner. He's got a full-time job. He's got a family, and yet he goes out. And so when you're talking about finding the flow and pushing limits, I'm in a not okay state right now because I'm like, my limits are very confined. I got this good friend who's doing these crazy limits. So that's just, I had to purge that because that's been sitting in my mind, which super, super excited for him, super proud of him. But, in sales, I think pushing the limits, I think as you escalate who you're selling to, the types of organizations, the type of people that you're talking to, I think that begins to push the limits. Maybe you go into, in an entrepreneurial world like you and I are in, sometimes there's situations where, maybe you've said to yourself, well, I'll sell it today and figure out how to deliver it tomorrow. Obviously we don't do nearly as much of that as we used to because we've been doing it for a long time. But, I think anytime you get in front of somebody or an organization or an industry that you haven't been in front of before, inevitably you get the question, at least in our world and probably yours as well, hey, have you ever worked in our industry before? Do you know anything about what we do and how we do it? And I think that begins to challenge you to be able to think on your feet and react and
So there's a couple things I want to pull together. First of all, yeah. I love what you said about that. Basically, you're plugging yourself into your friend's triathlon, and it's like, whoa, this is not my edge. So that's really important. Your edge is yours, and that is something that you must inwardly figure out. You've got to figure out where you're going to be slightly challenged, but with the potential of success. And in business and in life, I think in life is a good example. How many people, watch the marathon, watch the competition, watch that sort of stuff, and it's so distant. It's like the best you can do is watch it, and you're not even close to trying it. So you have to go inward and say, where am I? What would be a little more than where I'm at? And I don't think that's default thinking. I think you kind of have to be coached, challenged to look inward and say, what am I capable of? What would be a little more than that? And could that raise the game? And then we do this in business all the time. So as a leadership team, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, it's like, Steve Jobs could do it. I can do it. It's like, really? Okay. Okay. I'm probably not, actually. There's a lot of expense that goes with that. So figuring out where you are. If you've got a big vision, fine. I love the big vision. But where do you start? And I love the phrase that came up on my team. We talk about you dream big, but you got to start small. And it starts with understanding where you are right now. And that's the essence of it. Where are you? Getting from point A to point B is fantastic. It's getting to point A that's crushing, right? I'm lost. I don't know where the hell point A is. Everybody keeps telling me just to get from point A to point B, but I'm not there. And so I've got some deficiencies and some strengths, right? I might be way ahead of most people at point A in certain levels, but other areas I'm not there yet. What you got, man?
So let me ask the question, because there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. They don't want to push the limits. There's a lot of people that are very comfortable in complacency. And in my mind, I think there's a need for that in society. There's a need for people who are very comfortable doing one thing very well over and over and over and not getting, but then there's also a need for those people who are going to push and stretch and create the next, whatever.
Yeah. It looks that way.
What's the perspective on that?
Yeah, so I was going to challenge that, and then I realized I don't have the knowledge. It was all going to be bullshit. And so, I was going to say, no, I believe that everybody wants to challenge themselves and be their best. And as I said, I think I might be back to that. But I do think that there is a set of expectations. Like if you have a cohort and a peer group that has a certain degree of performance, and this is, I think there is some data to support this, that the LeBron James compared to the person who's just, a regular basketball player, like there's no path to that. There's no path in your mind. And so it's, you don't try. And so complacency is a little bit like giving up. It's a little bit like dreams dying. It's a little bit like the fear of failure. It's a bit of fear of success, all the fears that you could have. And it's naysayers. It's all of that uphill battle that could be there. And so complacency ends up being a way to avoid the conflict that is more fearful than there's more fear in that than the thrill of taking it to the next step, which I think is a disease, basically. But I do think it works. I think it's a disease as an individual. Sociologically, it's very powerful because you've got lots of people who are willing to have very moderate to low paying jobs, and they'll complain about it in exchange for changing it. So they'll sit there and they'll work in these jobs that you and I would just like gouge our eyes out. We're like, we can't. We have to. Like the pain of complacency is so high. So we get into the habit of like these scientific conversations, like how do I keep raising the game? And then there's somebody who did the research and they say like, hey, if you actually introspect, you can figure out where you're at and you can actually raise your game. And you and I are like, absolutely, we're doing that because we know it works and we're excited about getting there because we haven't been beaten down by a peer group of people who sort of say that's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it almost, just based on my experience, right? Because I've trained thousands and thousands of salespeople and leaders, right? And there's some people who come in and they have this yearning and desire for growth and development, and they want to get outside of their comfort zone. They want to push the limits. They want to improve and stretch. And then there's other people who are very clearly content, right? Mm-hmm. And not looking to try something new, not looking to break the mold or to.
Okay, so there's in business. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when I help a company put together the leadership team, which is based on not the leaders, based on what the organization needs. We figure out what the major functions of the organization are. That's where we start, and functions throughout the entire organization. But starting with the major organizations, we need a sales function, an operations function, and a finance function, we'll say. So then we put people in that seat. One of the questions we have to ask, we put the right people in those seats. We say, do you understand what that looks like? Call it get it. Do you want that? Call it want that. And is it possible for you to be successful in this job in your gut, you have the DNA, the capacity to do it, and we call that capacity. So you got to have all three: get it, want it, and capacity. And so a lot of times people don't understand the importance of the W, the want it. And a lot of times people confuse want it with willing, especially on a leadership team. Yeah, I can do that. I like you guys. Happy to do this slog of finance work, and I don't like the numbers, but I want to be successful with you guys. And that is a sense of obligation, thinking that this is what you want. If you say like, but what do you want? What would excite you? What would actually draw out the best in you that you would want to take to the next level? And I have experienced for sure a lot of people, entrepreneurs in particular, they're not used to asking that question. It seems crazy, right? It seems crazy that that's not a normal question, but it is absolutely a question that I get people stuck on. Like they simply refuse to answer it. They say, yeah, I'm willing to do that. No, do you want to do it? Yeah, I want to do anything that helps this team. Like, no, what gets you out of bed? I want to be a part of this team. Like, you are not hearing me. They're afraid to ask.
Whatever makes you happy.
Right, exactly. So that's not what works in reality, right? So what really works is you have to have two. If you're on a team, you got to have two things. You got to have the greater good in mind, and you got to know what's bringing the best out in you as an individual. And that can be very uncomfortable for people to realize that it feels so selfish. It's like, no. It's both. For the team to get your best, you got to know what your best is, and you got to go hone it, because it's probably not as good as it could be if you really fed it and cared for it.
I dig it.
Do you challenge yourself in your personal life? You don't have to talk about the therapy you go through. I mean, I'll talk about mine, but that definitely,
Well, that's part of what I was thinking about. That's the first thing I thought of. I mean, because business-wise, yes, I've always challenged myself professionally. I mean, that always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Even when I was a salesperson, I wanted to be the best salesperson on the team, top performer. So I always challenged myself professionally. Personally, I think I struggle with, okay, where do I really challenge myself? I mean, my biggest hobby is golf, and I do have a goal to be a club champ after my youngest graduates from high school. So there are some goals that I have to achieve great thing relative, right? I mean, okay, I want to be the number one player at some place. I do exercise, but I don't do it with the intent of becoming something greater than I am. At this point in my life, currently I'm exercising to maintain the ability to do the things I enjoy and not have to wear a t-shirt at the beach and, things like that.
I choose to wear the t-shirt because I hate sunscreen, but that's a whole other
Okay, that's fair. All right.
So I wear a rash guard, full length rash guard.
Rash guards are totally in vogue now, so you're good. So that's probably a more difficult question to answer. We could probably find areas that I feel like I tend to be someone who's naturally pushing and driving and striving and challenging. And so maybe there's some things in my life that I don't even pay attention to because it's just part of the DNA now. I don't know.
Well, so what I've learned, or I've come to believe is different. Learn sort of sounds like I check the box on knowledge, and it's like it's actually official wisdom now. Come to believe means that like that's what I'm thinking, but I'm open to the idea that I will have a new belief system down the line. Is that I used to think of the personal pursuits as sort of frivolous, which isn't how I started in life. I just got to that point when I had to figure out my earning potential in the business, and I was like, I love this business, and so that's the center of the world. And I do believe that from my purpose, it is my job to provide. But from there, I had to get to this leap of there's a human being here, a whole human being. And if it's something that stimulates me in my life in a frivolous way, that does not mean it is or a frivolous feeling way. It does not mean it is actually frivolous, because there's a whole human being here that needs to be challenged to be the best human being. And the whole human being shows up. Like when I am in session, I'm on this live stream with you, like my personality is the whole thing. It's not just a slice of it. And for me to be my best, I've got to develop all aspects of my area or my world. And so things like mountain biking, I love to do. It's an edge sport. It's a flow sport for sure. And I learned that I experienced it in college as my absolute flow sport. And then it's set to the side. And for me to be at my best, I'm realizing that like I need to grow at all sides of me to make sure I'm fully alive and fully me, and so that my personality and my confidence and my fun and all that, it sort of pervades everywhere. And like the Jeep thing, I got the new Jeep, we're going to do this. Like, well, no, let's just cancel it. It's a little scary to me. I'm like, no, we're doing this. And it was well, how does this tie back to my business productivity and then my ability to provide for my family? Like I'm putting them in danger. It feels like it doesn't make any sense. And it actually makes a ton of sense in retrospect, because my whole self is developed, and I'm really, really changing my thinking around what exactly it is to develop the whole self with focus. Like I don't think I want to try to do absolutely everything in the world. I'm not going to try to, even like the golf clubs, for example. I still think they're fine to sit where they are, but I definitely think that the mountain bike needs to get some more miles on it, and getting out and camping. I think that brings the family together, and it brings the best out in me and helps me do better work. And it is this idea of a little more on a constant basis until I die.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. No, I do. I think that has created some definite food for thoughts and some pockets and corners of my brain that I need to explore a little bit more.
And so, I mean, we could take this back to a lot of business owners and leaders and managers listen to this. I mean, if everybody thinks that they're going to go pursue their hobby later today, that's actually great. A little chess, if that's your thing. And I don't think you need to, like I said, take every single hobby you've ever had. But if there's one thing that would really could be an outlet, and especially if you can't explain it, that's the hard part. Like if you can't figure out how it's going to monetize for you, and you can't figure out like why that's the thing, you got to let that go. You got to say, this is for me. Like nobody else is going to judge this. I'm going to do this, and I really want to do this.
Well, I do think there is an evolution of priorities, right? You know, from when you start in a business and you have a young family, and it's to provide and try to, you know, accumulate as much success and as much wealth for the long term, and it's all business, business, business. And then you get older and you start recognizing, okay, well, maybe that's not as important as it once was. And so maybe now, you know, being the most present dad is the most important thing. And how do I become, you know, and as I'm saying this out loud, you know, pushing the envelope as far as the conversations that we have with our kids, and, you know, and improving the relationships, and, you know, I mean, so yeah, I think there's a constant thirst for being great at everything.
Well, I think that you mentioned parenting, and parenting is, I think, such a phenomenal example, because I think as we get older, there's less and less instruction set. I mean, all through high school and college, there was a plan. Like, there was not just a plan. There were people whose full-time job it was to make sure we followed the instructions. Like, there's counselors and placement people and all this kind of stuff. And as we get into later life, it's like they stop having those people. And if they do, you got to go find them, and you got to have, like, you know, relationship coaches and that kind of stuff. And you got to find them, and you're weird if you use them at first. Now it's not that at all. But I do think that parenting in particular is something that runs out of instruction sets as well. And so you get to be like, your kids are in college, and there's less and less people telling you what to do, and you're kind of going on, well, what my parents did and my grandparents did, and we're going back into the past when they did crazy shit that we don't do today. So I had the recent revelation that you still got to level it up. It's not going away. And for me as a parent, is like, my job's not over yet. It's transforming in huge ways. And I have to, if I want to be a parent, I'm going to be a great parent as I'm still alive until I'm dead. I'm going to have to continue to learn how it evolves, and I'm going to learn from other people and read and try stuff and apologize for things as a parent. I don't think it's over at all. I think because my daughter's about to enter the next phase of new challenges that I would like to help guide her through in a new, evolved way, with skills that many of which I don't have yet. So I'm going to have to continue to do that.
You have a minute and a half. How are you going to wrap this one up today?
So look at yourself and figure out where you're at, and what are the things that you want to be great at? What are your functions in life as an individual? Is it about learning? What is your purpose? Is it have to do with your family and your leadership, and figuring out where you are, and find one or two ways to push it 10%, 4%. I think 4 is 4 or 6% is what they actually the number is. I don't know how you actually quantify that, but you can also take that back to your leadership team, and you can look at the people who are maybe not performing where you want them to perform, and you can ask yourself, where are they? What will be the next level up? Rather than expecting everyone to perform at the same level, if there's one or two individuals you want to see go to the next level, where are they? And if they need to be 10%, 20% more, push them into that comfort zone, into that, or out of that comfort zone, into that edge, so they can move to the next level. And that could be your way to mentor and teach people to create a life of growth. I
love it. Well done, Mr. Henderson Leary.
That's right. That's my middle name. You can say Mr. Leary. You can say Mark Henderson. You can make it whatever. I don't know. Mark Henderson, Henderson Leary, Mark Henderson Leary. Anyway. Well, thank you, Brad. That was fun. Thanks for taking the journey with me and being out of your comfort zone there for about 30 minutes.
Enjoyed it. I'm sweating.
All right, brother. We'll see you next time.
Have a great one.
With me and my good friend, Brad.